We are back on the 0 Hour. I, as always, am your loyal host, Richard RJ Eskow. And joining us once again is our good friend, Thomas Frank. Tom Frank is an author, essayist, columnist. He is the author of such books as What's the Matter with Kansas and his most recent book, The People Know, a brief history of populism. He has a new essay out in Le Monde Diplomatique, which is very classy of him, called America, the Panic Room. And he joins us now. So first of all, Tom Frank, welcome back to the program.
Richard, it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's always great talking with you. And before we started recording the show or going live, so to speak, we were talking about David Graeber, our mutual friend, the anthropologist. I've already remembered him on this show, but we were just talking about the fact that A, that we both knew him, and B, that he seemed to be an endlessly inventive source of ideas and thoughts about virtually everything, right?
Yeah, he was brilliant, a genius. I loved talking to him because he would come up with the most unexpected and inventive interpretations of things. And I was saying that he and I came out of this very similar background. We were both at the University of Chicago at the same time, and we had a whole bunch of the same friends. And yet I didn't meet him until years later. It's just this really peculiar thing. But I was going to say the first time I met him, so it was right after Occupy, and I was in San Francisco, and I was going to do a reading, I think the next day, wherever it was. And the night before, there was David Graeber doing a reading for his book, Debt, the First 5,000 Years. He was doing a reading at City Lights Bookstore, which is one of the great all-time bookstores in all of the United States. And so I went to his event, and it was packed, it was crowded. And I remember, listening to him talk, and somebody in the audience, I was standing at the very edge, the very, far end of the audience, and somebody recognized me and started chatting with me about this, that, and the other. And at the time, I was very positive about Occupy. And I said something like, I never thought this would happen. It's so great to see a protest movement that I agree with, blah, blah, blah. And this guy, he picked up his cell phone. Of course he had an iPhone, and he held it up and he said, this makes it all possible. Anyhow.
Well,
yeah. And then David Graeber and I, afterwards, we went across the street to that. There's a legendary bar, and I am blanking on its name now. It was like the place that introduced espresso to America. You know what I'm talking about? It's Italian. At least I think.
Yeah, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah, anyhow, but yeah, he was. We had a great conversation then, and we had many, many, many wonderful conversations after that. What a great guy! I am going to miss that guy.
Yeah, me too. He understood every pop culture reference. I remember at one point he said something about how the ruling classes of this country had kind of willed Trump into being, into existence. And I said, creatures from the id.
Yeah.
And he immediately knew I was referring to Forbidden Planet, the old science fiction movie.
Ooh, I didn't know that. That's good.
He just, we both used the Jetsons as a political analogy. We pondered over that. Oh, he's just a terrific guy, so I miss him. That is not necessarily the business before us today, Thomas Frank. Again, a book, The People, Know, N-O. There it is.
I thought all along that Graeber would get a big kick out of this. Anyhow,
he may have, or whatever, if he had the chance to read it. The premise, of course, being simple, that anti-populism has a vigorous and long history in our culture. And, I invited you on. I thought we could talk about the debate, it's such as it was, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Oh my God. I wanted to turn it off. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. It just like it. And I woke up the next morning with just this feeling of dirtiness and shame, that I had
Me too,
sat.
but that's not uncommon for me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, the no, no, I perfectly understand, and yet I'm writing about this now, but and yet I feel somehow that Trump faces his most perilous threat yet, which is that his act may have become boring. That
You
underneath,
think so? I think it's no, that his asshole quality is impossible to deny. I mean, it was just he was a jerk with Hillary Clinton, but not like
right?
that. Not in this way. I mean, uh, I just couldn't believe it. That was the president of the United States acting like a petulant child. You know, I,
I could be wrong, but I just feel that his appeal to those who found him appealing has been that he, basically that he farts in Sunday school or whatever, that he violates the norms. And I just feel like
okay,
it's
that's
an
cool, but I
opportunity.
get I get that.
Right,
But a bully also violates the norms.
right.
Nobody likes a bully. Nobody. Our culture is all, I mean, and once it is obvious that that's what you are, you're not like standing up for the little guy. You're an asshole. You're a bully. Once it's obvious that that's, I mean, look, there's all with Trump. This is what's so fascinating about him is the ambiguity of the signifier, right? The ambiguity of who he is.
Right.
That there are all of these different things going on with the guy. And as you and I have said many times, in 2016, he was saying a lot of things that were true and that needed to be said. I mean, he was a cynical, liar about them, but at least he was saying them. When he, talked about the trade agreements, he talked about the endless wars, he talked about Wall Street, he talked about the ruling
Right.
elite. He was right about that stuff, and it needed to be said. Uh, you know, but he was also a bigot and an asshole. And anyhow, there's always been that ambiguity. Well, there isn't anymore, is there?
No, but I think the other thing, the sort of besides what he was saying, I think the appeal he held for some people was also that he violated.
By the way, I got to sit up straight. You don't, Trump. One of the things that bugs me, he leans on the podium. Have you ever noticed that? When I was in high
He
school,
does well, he has a lot of odd postural things, partially because he's trying to hide the fact that he's got an enormous paunch. So he stands, he leans forward in a very odd
yeah,
way. That's why the very long ties. That's why the long coat jacket, suit jacket. And yes, he does lean in an odd way.
which they
But
taught us
what I was,
never to do when I was in high school debate.
oh, I
And they
was in
also like interrupting when it's the other guy's turn to speak. You can't do that.
not right, not constantly without interruption, but as I was saying, speaking of interrupting Thomas Frank, as I was saying, um he I think people liked in 2016, his voters liked the fact that he did, it was kind of impolite and kind of disobeyed the rules. It was like,
Right, but it
he
was in service of what they saw as a higher, a sort of a higher, a more important thing, which was that he in his crude and vulgar way, he got at truths that
right,
that your sort of mealy mouthed, slick Washington consensus types did not.
right.
And he did have, I mean, Biden is a good foil for that because Biden is a slick Washington consensus type, and Biden does use all the euphemisms and that sort of thing. But Trump's bullshit was just over the top. It was cruel.
I know.
It was
Yeah.
pointless. It was just,
And
at some point he was just doing it because he could, just to get
and I
away with
think
it.
it hurt him also in the sense that if he, to your point, if he had let Biden talk more, Biden might have sounded elitist. He might have
Yeah. Biden
sounded.
didn't, by the way, Biden did not only had one or two really good moments. The main thing that you come away from is that you feel sorry for the guy. At least I did, you know. Biden only had one or two good rehearsed lines that I thought were effective, but you know, you'd think he would have been better prepared than that for this kind of insane onslaught.
You know, that's interesting because I actually thought, Thomas Frank, that he did pretty well. I thought
He
that,
didn't
you
buckle.
know,
Let's give him that. He didn't buckle. He didn't give in. He kept his spirit up to the end. And there's, you know, that's really good. He didn't give in to the bully. I don't want to make it sound like it's just that Biden he offered so very little. You know.
no, of course. But I mean, I think this debate, any pretense that it was going to be about any policy at all,
Yeah.
was quickly thrown out the window. So then the only question becomes, how relatable is Joe Biden in responding to this onslaught of bullying and interrupting? And I think he did a good job. And again, this is totally independent of policies or politics. I think he did a very good job as a kind of everyman, looking at the camera, breaking the third wall, and saying, "Can you believe this guy?"
Yeah, yeah,
And it
that was
like
good.
a cartoon almost, where they do that in cartoons. Can you believe this idiot? And so I thought all that stuff, and I thought that, you know, oh man, we just shut up, man. I thought that was a good kind of
Yeah,
like
it was.
everyman
Yeah,
response.
yes, you're right. Yeah, I think it. I mean, it's. I would rather forget that uh, as soon as I could than talk about it and dwell on it. I think there probably won't be any more presidential debates, not only this year but for a long time. I'll be surprised if they have more.
Well, let's
After
talk.
the Nixon Kennedy thing, they didn't have any more until, was it Carter and Ford? Yeah, not so that's like 15 years, 16
No, there
years.
were that's right. There certainly weren't LBJ and Nixon. There wasn't Nixon and
No,
McGovern.
no,
So
that's right. It was Carter and Ford was the next ones.
Carter and Ford. Yeah. So okay. So well, then let's talk about that for a second, because you know, people idealize the Kennedy Nixon debate, but I don't think that was all that great
Have you
either.
ever watched them? They're really boring.
They're
They're
very
really
boring.
boring.
They're and they're both kind of exaggerating. They're trying to out hawk each other
Yep.
on
Yep.
missile gap and non-existent missile gap and all
Wamoy
that
and
stuff.
Matsu.
Chamoy and Matsu, which I still can't find on a map. Two islands that we're going to
Yeah, I think
determine.
they're uninhabited, right? And they're off the coast of Taiwan, you know?
Right. And I mean, it's like the Falklands, you know, I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of,
except for the Falklands has people.
but the Falklands has people, right. And so, yeah, but they're penguin spattered, you know, rocks in the middle of nowhere. But that's what they chose to debate about. So we needn't sentimentalize Kennedy Nixon. But I guess then the question becomes, who cares about debates anyway? I think they stink, you know. I think if they were candidates sitting at a table and asking each other questions, I mean, leaving Trump out for obvious reasons, I don't think. I think the debate format is lousy. And Chuck Todd saying you have 45 seconds to answer the question of whether, you know, the moral arc of the universe is along that bends towards justice or whatever the question. It's preposterous. So I mean, am I
But it
wrong?
was
You
a very
disagree on
2020
that?
thing to happen, wasn't it? To have the presidential debate just get completely hijacked and wrecked, and destroyed. I mean, it's like everything else has gone wrong this year. Why not, right? The
Yeah, I
hell
mean,
with it.
yeah, California is burning. You know, the West Coast is burning, and debates are a thing of the past. So your prediction is there will be no more ever,
Oh, I don't know
and
about
they'll
ever, but not for a while. I mean, we'll
and
see
they'll
it. We'll see.
salt the
We'll
earth
see if
behind the podiums.
we'll see about. I mean, maybe they'll have another one this year. But if I was Biden, I wouldn't do it. Um, you know, I would not give
Well,
that guy another a platform for that to behave that
well,
way. The only way you could
okay.
do it is if you put the candidates in glassed off booths and like turn their microphones off and on, like one of those old game shows in the 50s.
Yeah, that's right, right. The quiz show scandals of the yeah. Um, well, that would be surrealistic.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's
and
right. It would.
very appropriate in the age of the pandemic. But Yes, I guess that's true. Now, of course, tactically, Joe Biden can't refuse to debate because that makes him look like a coward. But what he could do is set preconditions that he knows Trump would refuse to accept. He could say it has to be A, B, and C. Trump refuses, and then he can say it's Trump that doesn't want to show up. That's what I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
do
Well, I
about
mean,
it.
who cares? It's like, this sort of insider baseball. Are you saying that it should be a multiple choice test? Is that what you're saying, Richard?
That what should be a multiple choice? The
That
debate?
the debate, yeah, they should give them
No, it is
a
a
test.
multiple choice test already. I
Yeah,
mean, that's with these idiotic moderators.
yeah.
And again, we're talking to Thomas Frank, who is the author of The People Know. It's his latest book. And, it's interesting because, of course, expecting you to come on the program, I was thinking about populism and anti populism and how I actually don't know of a general election. I can't think of one in recent memory where populism in policy played less of a role or less of a clear cut role. I mean, you in a way, 2016 populism was in the kinds of lies that Trump was telling at the
Oh,
time,
but
right?
he's still that the Republican convention was just nonstop. Um, Crazy pseudo populist promises. Trump's entire speech, and in fact, the speech of what's his daughter's name, Ivanka, that she gave introducing him. By the way, which I thought was, we haven't talked about the conventions. I thought that was the only good moment in, I mean, really inspired moment in either of the two parties' conventions. I mean, the Republicans are all giving these dreadful speeches in some sterile, stone room somewhere in Washington D.C. with no audience, and it's just the most boring thing in the world. And then all of a sudden, with no warning, the camera cuts to the White House and the camera is moving. It's on a crane or something. And here comes Ivanka walking out of the White House between these rows of flags, her hair blowing in the breeze, and there's a live audience. And it's just like they've just completely smashed all the expectations that you have for what these conventions are going to be. And then she gives this speech all about Trump, and I mean it was absolutely nuts because this is Ivanka Trump, Fifth Avenue socialite, heiress, beloved of the sort of art community, the fashion world, and that kind of thing. And she gives this speech. It's like straight on proletarian nonsense about Trump as the friend of the working man. It was incredible. And then Trump himself comes out, and it's all about who hates him. And he insists all through his whole speech that he's a good president because the elite despise him. And he talked about big pharma, he talked about the media, but it was in some ways went back to he knows. I don't think he's obviously hasn't read my book, of course not, but he understands that the sort of unanimity of media hatred for him is somehow evidence in his favor, and played that to the hilt. I mean, that's all he's got going for him, is that the liberals hate him. That's all he's got. He's been, he's bungled this presidency. The only important pieces of legislation he's managed, well, hell, just about it. The only thing he managed to get done, period, was a tax cut for rich people,
And we knew
for his
that.
friends.
Yeah, we knew that was going to happen. I mean, that was never in danger.
Well, I mean, it's, that, and then all these deregulations that he did for polluters and stuff like that. His record is absolutely disastrous for these people, that, for the working class people that he's trying to persuade to vote for him. And, but the other thing they did a very good job of at the Republican convention was fear. We are in a time where we're living in a culture of fear. Everybody is afraid. Everybody's locked in their house and observing the world through social media, which, as we know, it exists to ratchet up the fear and the hate and the conformity, and to, unleash mobs of enforcers on you if you step out of line. And
And this,
it's a fearful time that we're in. And the Republicans really spoke to that fear very effectively, I thought, ratcheting it up, inventing all kinds of, I mean, ridiculous. I mean, when I say effectively, I don't mean truthfully. I mean,
right.
I mean, this is what they're good at as a party is insisting that the world is coming to an end. That the barbarians are at the gates, and only the Republicans stand between us and the Trotskyite hordes. And then the very next speech will be something about like how they're here to rescue the working class or something. It's just that they'll say anything. They'll say, by the way, I don't want to say I won a bet, but some friends and I.
You're allowed to say that.
Okay.
We're not the gaming commission.
Okay.
Around here,
All right. So some friends of mine, and during the Republican convention, we had a kind of a bet. I said that one of the speakers would both attack Biden for the 94 crime bill, which he, by the way, totally deserves to be attacked for. It's one of the most dreadful. And, I've written all about that in the past, but that they would both attack Biden for the 94 crime bill and mass incarceration, and in the same speech, attack him for being too soft on crime.
Well, of course.
Trump did it at the debate.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
In the same like little 2-minute segment, attacked him from both sides at the same time. I won that bet.
But I hope something substantial was involved. But yeah, and what was interesting to me about that too was that Trump also accused Biden of using the word super predator.
Yes, I've
never heard him do.
Hillary did it, but look, Biden gave a lot of speeches on behalf of that bill, and it would not surprise me in the least if he used that. If you go back and look at some of the speeches, it's absolutely I quote him in Listen Liberal, where he's boasting about all the new death penalties that they've passed, that he says that Democrats have added into this bill. That was a sick time. 1994. This was the Clinton administration. They had just, remember, their whole idea was to constantly beat down the left. Sister Souljah, to go to a United Auto Workers convention and tell them that they had no future. Do stuff like that. And then they do this crime bill, and it was a bidding war with the Republicans. They would talk about it this way: the Republicans want to do this many death penalties. Well, we want to do even more. They want to put this many cops on the street. We want to do even more. They want to do mandatory minimums for this. We want even more time in prison for these people. It was sick. It was a sick time. And what makes you just want to vomit about it. And I was angry about it at the time. I remember where I was when they passed that bill, and how just like disgusted I was with the world. Anyhow, that was, all of these people who are the sort of leading lights of the mainstream media today. That's when they were getting their start, and all of them were like, the Clinton administration is the greatest thing in the world because they figured out how to beat the Republicans, blah 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 blah. And this is how you do it. You do things like this. So it's not like this was just an incidental thing that Biden happened to do. This was essential to who these people are. Well, and he still hasn't atoned for that, if you ask me.
And I understand and I agree. And I think it's also essential to understanding media in this day and age, too.
How's that? Do you see my little man there? That's the East German crosswalk guy. They call him the what is it? The Amber Man, the Ambler Man, the Ambling Man. He's in East Berlin, or what used to be East Berlin. He's the crosswalk guy. I'm putting that up there for the room raider person.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope it helps.
Yeah, it's going to get me a 10 on the roomrating.com or whatever it's called.
Was he was the feng shui wrong or something? I'm not sure why you adjusted him just now. But
because I want him to be visible through my camera.
Okay. What was I saying? Oh, yes. About, I had a couple things I wanted to ask you, actually. I'll hit on both of them. One of them was this culture of fear, this sort of state of fear that we're all in right now. Trump and Biden, I think, are both acknowledging it in their campaigns, and I think they're handling it in very different ways. I think Trump is, as frightened as you are, you're not frightened enough. chaos is around the corner. It's coming,
Yeah.
to
Remember
right now. It's
Kim
coming.
Guilfoyle's speech, which do you remember she shouted her speech?
Yeah,
America, it's all on the line.
that was the most. Well, I can't swear because that, but it was the
Why can't
most
you swear?
because then Troy has to go back and blip it out.
Oh,
But it
but I
was the
thought we
most
already did when we were talking about Trump.
because of the FCC. We did. He has to blip that out too. The That was the most batshit thing I've heard ever. But that's the strategy. And on Trump's side, to terrify you even further, Biden's, it seems to me, Biden is acknowledging that by saying it will all be okay
Yeah.
if you just, it will be like it used to be. And to me, Biden's appeal
I
is,
have to say, I think that's, there's something very effective about that
I
right
do
now.
too.
I've been worried all these years that that we were going to get a Democratic candidate who did that and it would be a disaster. But now that we're in this situation, I think that's the way to play it. It's not like Biden's got anything else to sell, but his grandfatherly sort of reassurance, I'd go for that right now. I think that's, that is the right way to, that's the way to go right now.
Yeah,
And
I
not in any other climate.
right. I feel
No.
exactly the same way. All my go-to moves are not necessarily needed at the moment. I mean, normally I would be in a state of despair and rage that, John Kasich spoke, that, Republicans had a lot more airtime at the convention
Oh,
than,
it's not just that. They're reaching out. That's how they see themselves. They're reaching out to the Republicans and putting them on their, whatever committees. And
right, Cindy
that's that's
McCain
that's
and
that's how they understand themselves. We are really seeing. So there used to be an old theory of American politics. I mean, this is a real left-wing kind of Marxist theory almost, but
oh, hit me.
okay, it's
Now, let's
the
hear it.
lifeboat theory, the lifeboat theory, which is that, you govern, this is in the late 19th century, you govern through the ruling elite of America governs via one party, usually back in those days, the Republicans. And then when they managed to discredit themselves, through corruption and blundering and
Right.
mismanaging, they would just move over to the Democratic Party. It was the lifeboat party. And that back then, the Republicans were the dominant
Uh-huh.
party, and the Democrats were the lifeboat. And so Grover Cleveland, that was
No, that's
his
it.
role.
Fascinating. I hadn't heard that. And as I say, normally I would object to that strategy. And in most years, I think it's a bad strategy, right? But this year, I don't think it's going to depress base turnout very much because everybody's so wound up. My biggest fear is that a bunch of these people are going to get cabinet positions, and then we'll be
Yeah, I know it sucks. It absolutely stinks. And yet, at the same time, I have got I've got my N95 mask, and I'm ready to go over to the polling place here in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm going to stand in line all day if it takes, and I'm going to cast my vote in person, and I'll be damned if I don't.
I do have to say that the imagery of John Kasich standing at a crossroads so that they could say, tonight we stand at a crossroads, which, by the way, some Democratic speechwriters who wrote an op-ed for the New York Times cited as one of the great
Oh, of
moments
course, yeah.
of the convention. Um,
Yeah, well, there weren't all that many great ones to speak of. I thought Obama gave a good speech.
no,
That was one of the weakest. Uh, what really got me? You read my story in Le Monde Diplomatique, by the way, which is not a fancy newspaper. You just think it is because the title's in French, but my article's in English. You can read it in English. I mean, it's been translated into French and German and etc. But it's also available in English. But the
sounds highfalutin to me.
the they didn't talk about the middle class. It's like, what Democratic Party is this? I mean, the party has this core identity of the party of the people, the party of the work, the defender of the working class, the defender of the middle class, etc. That's who they have always been my entire life, even when they weren't, even when they were busy turning their backs on that, they always, took pains to remind you of their brand identity because that's who they are. That's very, very valuable. Right. And they didn't do it this time. And I just couldn't believe that. I didn't see any invocations of that, maybe once in like Biden's speech, but no, they didn't talk about it at all. It was very clear that they're the party of diversity. They made that absolutely clear.
Right, right,
It was very clear that they're the party of norms and that they will defend, traditional presidential roles and stuff like that. At Obama's speech, the
right,
constitutional law professor Barack Obama giving a
right,
very sort of professorial speech, which was
right.
pretty good in its way. But no, they never talked about that. They didn't. And it's like, how can that be? How can they let that go? And this is, you'll read this in my story in Le Monde Diplomatique. The very first speech at the Republican convention, after they were done with the, saying the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever, the very first speech was about working class people, and they used that phrase, and they never let up. They hit the gas on that and never let up the whole time. We are in the middle of something really ominous and awful, Richard, that is going to. It's not just this year. This is a long-term change, and it's going to outlast Trump, and it's going to outlast Biden. And that is that the Democratic Party is openly becoming a party of a kind of an elite. I don't want to say the elite because there's more than one elite, but of a very self-righteous group that isn't really no longer interested in the sufferings of or the situation of working class people as working class people. They're interested in all these other groups that intersect with working classness, but no, they're not interested in that category
But they
by
don't talk
itself.
about the working classness
No,
of those groups. They
right.
have
They
a
talk about
tendency to
the group
celebrate
in general.
the wealthy and elite
Of
among
course.
those groups,
Yep.
and not. Um, and obviously, these are not universal rules. I guess I would say that's one possible outcome, but the other outcome is there is this insurgent wing of the
Oh,
party.
I know, and that's who I cheer for, and that's who I identify with. But something is going on that's bigger than look. You know me. You know my story. I can be depressing or I can be optimistic depending on what day of the week you catch me and how much sleep I got last night. And I think that we're going to have an interregnum here with Biden is going to win. He's going to have 4 years. And if they don't get their stuff together, the Democrats, that is, and if they don't find their way back to class, to that old sort of historical identity of the Democratic Party, they are going to be in deep, deep trouble going forward. Because the next, Trump, as you have seen, is desperate to extend his reach to uh, members of the working class that aren't white.
Right.
He understands in his stupid brain. He understands that is the secret to victory, and that he's close to it, but he hasn't got it yet, and he won't get it. He's going to go down in flames in a month. But whoever is the next Trump will actually be better situated to get that, whether you're talking about Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or Trump Jr., Donald Jr., because they won't, just be this serial bigot in the way that Trump has been.
And
And
loudmouth and
yeah,
off-putting.
yeah, it
And
just,
and
ugh.
we can close with this, I guess. But and my fear is that, I mean, things. It's going to be a rough ride economically, no matter what happens for working people in this country. We're just, we're just hanging on by a thread. The working class of this country, if that, after this COVID problem, and we
I
don't
know.
know how, and either Biden or the people around him will at least repair the breach temporarily, or I fear,
Will they? Will they?
or I fear what will come
You think
next. I
you
have
bring
no
in
idea if they
people
will.
like John Kasich, and they're going to no.
I don't
So this
see
is the problem:
indication.
is
Yeah,
if he plays this out as he's signaled, which is Biden is, as you and I know, a very conservative Democrat,
right.
and he has surrounded himself with other very conservative Democrats and Republicans. And if he plays this out in the sort of Clintonian Biden fashion, as is his natural inclination, no, he won't. He won't do anything. He will not. They'll walk right into the buzzsaw. But look, that's 4 years off. We're going to have a breathing spell. Let's hope. Let's hope it's either that or they, unleash the Proud Boys on all of us.
Well, on that cheerful note, we're going to have to leave it there. But as always, Thomas Frank, and again, Tom Frank's new book is The People Comma Know, A Brief History of Anti-Populism. As always, Tom, thanks for the insightful writing, which can be found in Le Monde Diplomatique. I'm sure you all read it every day. And
It's actually a great newspaper. I mean,
I'll check it out. And as always, thanks for coming on the program.
my pleasure, Richard. I will talk to you soon.
Look forward to it. And we'll be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.